It's John Pollock and Jimmy Korderas with you. This is our WWE Survivor Series review from the Air Canada Centre in Toronto. And we have two perspectives of it to discuss. Jimmy, you were live there at the show. I watched it on television because we were on the air right after on TSN Radio. Yep. And we're going to jump right into things. Yeah. A minute 27, Bill Goldberg defeats Brock Lesnar. I don't think you could do it any more one-sided than they did. What was the reaction in the building? Because I'm sure it caught many people off guard that they went completely in the opposite direction of a lot of who assumed, hey, Brock's coming in, Brock's winning.
Well, the reaction was, it was that split second of, the gasp. Like, did this really happen? But it was a huge pop. There was a huge pop live, and people were again flabbergasted. And
this was by no means there was no anti-Goldberg reaction.
No, the crowd all night, even before the pay-per-view started, were chanting Goldberg.
NXT, they were chanting Goldberg.
Yeah, so that fear of how the Toronto crowd would react to Goldberg, I guess in hindsight was unfounded because he was hugely over, and I know you discussed about him being maybe the most over babyface on the roster right now, and I tend to agree with that. In an organic fashion, he is the most over babyface because you can look at other guys and people, screaming and cheering for AJ Styles, for example, and stuff like that. But that's one segment of your audience, the hardcore, diehard, whatever you want to call them, smart marks, which I hate that term, but anyways, I use it just to mess with you guys. But okay, those guys all love AJ Styles, but they also like Goldberg, but there's that casual audience that you're trying to cater to that also love Goldberg. And even kids now today who didn't know who Goldberg was 12 years ago, who maybe have never even seen him compete in a match before, now know who Goldberg is because he's coming out as this guy who wants to be a role model for kids and a superhero for kids, and it's working.
He's got that real aura that only Brock Lesnar has on the roster, and here's a guy that is a babyface. There is no gray area. 100% Bill Goldberg is a babyface, and that's the response. The crowd takes him as a babyface, and also he has a kind of like that legendary status attached to him for a lot of people that he's part of their childhood as well. And what other baby faces in this company can you talk about that get that positive of a reaction? Exactly. I feel deep down most people do really appreciate and respect John Cena, but it's so part of the reaction that you have the dueling back and forth. And we see how Roman gets that reaction now as well. But this guy, he was so hot during this return that what was supposed to be a one-off, and that's what he had signed on for, you couldn't help but look at these reactions. As we talked about this last week, Jimmy, there was a lot on the table, and they took a guy that was hot, and they decided, let's ride this wave out. Let's see how long we can go with this rather than extinguish this and beat him against Brock Lesnar. And to me, what you have is a way bigger rematch out of this, and now you have two big monsters to me because I don't believe that finish hurt Brock Lesnar. Am I wrong, Jimmy?
I agree with you there. I don't think if it hurt him whatsoever. And you got to give Brock Lesnar huge credit in this because
he was all business in seeing how do we make this bigger the next time. And he was unselfish.
His facial reactions, Vince McMahon always says, your money is here. Always said that your money is made right there. And his facial reactions, just off the beginning, the push, and just getting pushed onto his butt and just the look up at Goldberg, his facial reactions told a story. Then the way he sold the first spear, everything he did was business and all made sense. And I know a lot of people are complaining about the minute and 27 seconds, so I made a comparison to someone on social media, of course. I said, so would you feel upset if you went to an MMA fight and Ronda Rousey taps her opponent out in 15 seconds? And they said, well, that's different because that's an actual combat sport. But pro wrestling is designed to emulate combat sports. And although we know it is a work, scripted entertainment, at the same time, you're trying to emulate combat sports. And in combat sports, you have fights that are a minute or 2 minutes.
And what was the risk you're running if you had decided, which was kind of the mindset in 2003 when you were there, Jimmy, the first go-around with Goldberg was, well, we don't do these kinds of matches here. Our top guys aren't losing in 60 seconds. Right. We're going to have Bill go out there and do 15, 20-minute matches. And that is not what the people wanted to see. And they had that kind of stubborn mentality, and those two go out there and do 15 minutes in Toronto, and they lose the crowd, and they turn on the match, or the match gets sloppy. You do not have a hot Bill Goldberg by the end of it. And you may even have a cooler Brock Lesnar no rematch because the interest, I think the air would have been out of the balloon. Instead, you gave them enough. You gave them the Bill Goldberg they wanted. Yes. And now you have the story. Can Brock Lesnar beat this guy? He's 0-2. It's the first time where Brock is now going to have to go and avenge this. And it was it a fluke? How does he come back? And there's so many ways you can go at this. And you made Bill Goldberg look like a world beater.
Exactly. And like I tell people, wait until the story is finished being told. This is chapter 1 of basically the second book for them, but it's chapter 1, and people are so hell-bent on reading the final chapter first. No, just enjoy the ride. This is going to be fun. We don't even know what the next step is, and people are already complaining. I want to see where this goes. I am intrigued to find out what happens next. Yeah, not who's next, but what's next.
Yeah, and also it was kind of split down the middle. There were, to me, as many, I put up a poll on Twitter, and we had like 620 people responding on Sunday night, and it was like 52-48 of who liked it, who hated it. Right. And I think that there were a lot of people that I think are very intrigued by this, and a lot of that 48% will be intrigued too when this rematch happens. Now, putting on your fantasy booker cap, Jimmy, what should be the next progression here? I don't believe these two should be involved in anything until the Rumble again, at least match-wise. And I would not do the match at the Rumble. No. I really believe this could take you to WrestleMania, and whether that's putting both in the Rumble and spinning them off. I mean, what do you see? Or is the rematch something that should happen before Mania?
I think it should happen at Mania because the way it was set up at Survivor Series is a perfect setup for Mania, and you can have that slow, long build towards it. What I would do in a perfect world is I would we're doing this on Monday night before Raw, so I would have Goldberg come out on Raw and announce that he is entering the Royal Rumble match. But at the Royal Rumble, as he's making his entrance into the match, have Brock Lesnar jump him before he makes it into the match and prevent him from getting into the match. That's kind of like his receipt for what happened at Survivor Series, and go from there and build towards their rematch at WrestleMania.
So, I mean, to me, it's the hottest program you have right now is those two. Now, I get the complaints people have that, hey, these are not regular guys that are doing all the house shows, but to me is not a strike against utilizing Bill Goldberg efficiently. I don't think that there's a guy right now, Jimmy, that is ready as of this moment to have that kind of a win over Brock Lesnar. And that's a detriment of the main roster and getting guys ready into those positions. But to me, that doesn't mean that you just ignore what Bill Goldberg has done over the past month and build upon that and make him stronger. And we were talking about this Sunday night, that you just imagine when he had come in 2003, Austin's just had his last match. The Rock is going off forever at that time. You didn't know when he was coming back. They needed someone ready, and if they had this kind of thinking with Bill Goldberg, I just feel there was so much left on the table for that last run that it's really amazing to watch this version here. He is 13 years older, but I mean, this has been tremendous how they have booked Bill Goldberg.
I think so too. In my mind, there was no better way to book him than what they have accomplished. And I love the old Roddy Piper line, though. I have to go back to Piper, where he said, just when you think you have all the answers, they change the questions. And they got everybody. And anybody, I know there's people out there who said, yeah, I predicted Bill Goldberg. Nobody predicted what we saw on Sunday night. And that's the beauty of this business, is when you can get people in an unpredictable outcome and just get them talking. And that's what's happening right now. Whether you liked it or not, you're talking about it, and that's the main goal.
Now, for those that maybe were not happy with the length of the main event, I mean, you really have to do some Matrix-level movements to get over the fact that you had just seen a 52-minute Raw versus SmackDown match, which was
actually pretty good.
I thought, Jimmy, like that was paced very well. That did not feel like 52 minutes to me. I was like looking down at my watch, of course, timing this, Jimmy. I got to be accurate, of course.
Of course.
I thought the 52 minutes was pretty well booked, and that was the right amount of time for the match. I didn't find that this dragged at all. They worked this around key people, and just with the talent you had in there, I mean, the majority of the talent in that match, they could carry that amount of time for close to an hour.
That was my fear going in. The length of the pay-per-view, extending it to 4 hours, and that was a fear of mine.
We got the underrun, Jimmy.
Which is cool. I'm absolutely fine with that, because even with the main event going short, as they say, and with this 52-minute match,
you have an unpredictable finish for it's not always a given. You're going right to 11 or over Eastern time. That you could get a shorter main event.
Right.
I think that's good to do every now and then.
Yeah, especially in an era where you want to leave people wanting more, especially in a pay-per-view which is extended in time now. I think they left people wanting more, which is good.
That's a great point.
But in the 5-on-5 match with the men's thing, I thought every issue that was established before going into this match on the individual brands made sense with how they progressed those storylines. You know, the Kevin Owens and Jericho thing. Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns seem to be on the same page for now. In a perfect world, I would have loved to see Roman spear Seth.
When they had their backs towards one another, I was thinking like this is the time to do it if you wanted to do that.
But now that being said, maybe down the road, I'm not saying that, but maybe down the road, if you're going to do the Goldberg, Roman Reigns turn, maybe Goldberg's the guy you do it on. Have him spear Goldberg. That would get against Seth Rollins.
If you want a defined babyface and a defined heel,
that's the one to do it, in my opinion. But anyways, back to that match. Everything made sense, and we were talking last week in the preview. How do you get rid of a Braun Strowman in a creative fashion? I think they accomplished that fairly well. Everybody was protected, so to speak, in this match, but also everybody had a moment to shine, and I thought it was, like you said, the pacing and the booking was absolutely fine.
Yeah, and somewhat surprising that the two guys left standing at the end, Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt, who it feels this is not going to be some short-term Daniel Bryan and the Wyatt family thing. It feels like this is going to be a long-term thing with Orton aligned with Bray. Maybe it carries through Mania, and then you eventually do have Orton do the turn on Bray, but it seems like these two, they went really strong. And pinning Roman Reigns, that was pretty significant because that is not a guy they trivialize losses with.
No, absolutely. And you know, for a long time now, we've been saying that Bray Wyatt needed something, or the Wyatt family needed something to get them to that next level. And I feel like the association with Randy Orton is that maybe that missing piece of the puzzle for the Wyatt family to elevate them to the next level. And Randy Orton is that, that key. So I'm hoping that this continues, at least like you said, until Mania. And I like them together. I like them. It's a different dynamic, and Luke Harper is just maybe the most underrated, underutilized guy in the group, but still a great presence there.
I really enjoyed the interaction with AJ Styles and Seth Rollins. That's just a combination I really wanted to see. And, with Seth out when AJ came into the company and then the brand split, you really haven't gotten to see that. So you got a bit of interaction there. As well in this match, Shane McMahon, for his elimination, he was setting up for a Van Terminator and then took a Roman Reigns spear in midair. His head just crashed down back against the mat and looked to be just knocked silly as a result of it. We don't know if he suffered a concussion, but his eyes were totally glazed over, had to be helped to the back, and that looked to be a situation, Jimmy, I'm sure you've been in the middle of, where that was the elimination spot, but still, I mean, there was some awkwardness there of, figuring out was he okay or not, and it appears he was at least moving around backstage and seemed to be okay afterwards.
Yeah, and, I have to give John Cohn, who was the referee for the match, thumbs up because, obviously the safety of everyone is first and paramount in any match. And people were, what I don't like is people trying to assess blame in a situation like that. When you have a spot such as that one.
That was a really tough sequence to pull off.
Exactly. So, you can't blame either individual. I blame the circumstances around it for what happened. But, man, did you expect anything less from Shane McMahon? I mean, like, the guy's an adrenaline junkie. Here's a guy who leaped off the top of the
Jimmy Korderas dictionary.
Yeah, I know. Not my best subject. But off the cell at WrestleMania. So I expected something big from him, and we got actually two big moments. The elbow through the table, which we've seen before, but and we've seen the Van Terminator, but this went into the spear, unfortunately ended the way it did. But sometimes you have to call an audible, and like you said, I believe that was the elimination spot.
Yeah.
So you got your desired result, and just it was more of an, end-around way to get there.
Now, they had SmackDown win the big men's singles match, and then Raw won the tag and the women's elimination matches. This just seemed weird to me, Jimmy, because I'm watching this TV, and it was set up very much like this was going to be this best of 3 series, and instead it was, Raw won the numbers matches, but SmackDown won the most important one. So it was like we had 2 participation ribbons given out to Raw and SmackDown by the end of this.
Yeah.
And there was a reason people weren't really engaged in this. We talked about the stakes, and it came down to, well, it's bragging rights. And I don't think you even had that at the end of this. It was both sides have a claim to victory. So it just seemed, if you're going to do this, I think there's something to be learned in that main event, is that you got a definitive winner and a definitive loser, and there was passion on both sides of what they could have done.
Right.
And in this, it was like, this was a traditional form. It's like, we're not going to give you a definitive winner or a loser. It's almost like a tie, kind of, in a way. That's how it's positioned. It's like not one brand won this.
Yeah, it's almost like they weren't keeping score. You know what I mean? And you know, like you said, stakes. Something needed to be on the line for this, and not, you know, everybody's got suggestions. Like, you can come up with something creatively. I know some people said maybe the number 30 spot in the Royal Rumble goes to the winning brand, and, you know, they could compete for whoever gets that spot. I would have preferred something like the All-Star Game in baseball, where the winning brand...
It's home field advantage?
No, but their championship, whether it's the World Heavyweight Championship or the Universal Championship, main event's WrestleMania.
Right.
You know, something along those lines. At least make it meaningful. I mean, they tried to make it seem like brand loyalty was, you know, at the forefront here. But then again, at certain times we saw that it didn't matter. You know, like especially with the Ambrose and AJ Styles thing, and you know, it just didn't make sense. And of course, with Baron Corbin coming out in the other match.
And that was just, to me, there were like 2 finishes on this show where it just felt like really uneventful. The Baron Corbin run-in for a match that did have perhaps the most important stakes on this show, was like where the cruiserweights go.
Right.
Causes the DQ, so Brian Kendrick keeps his title. And then we also had Sami Zayn, who had the Miz in a figure 4, and then the bell rings. It's Maurice, and as Zayn is all confused, he gets rolled up. And I thought, did no favors to Sami Zayn, who just looked like he was outsmarted here by the heel unit of Miz and Maurice. So I wasn't crazy about those 2 finishes. In terms of the elimination matches, the tag match I thought was very good, especially by the end, where you had the Usos against Cesaro and Sheamus. I thought American Alpha also got a chance to shine, which they have not had the opportunity to do a whole lot of on SmackDown. Even the Shining Stars got more than I thought they would in that match.
I thought, again, another well-paced match, and everybody got their opportunities in this one. And especially, you mentioned the Usos. The Usos, man, I love those guys. I think they're one of the best tag teams in the company right now. And everybody had their moment to shine. The Cesaro, Sheamus thing is, I hate to say it, I'm really kind of digging this odd couple, so to speak.
We saw Cesaro introduce a 416.
Yeah, 416, which has he done that before? I don't. I've heard that he's done it at house shows. I don't know, but that's the first time I've seen it on TV or anything.
And the women's match, we can finish off on this again. The Raw team gets the win with Charlotte and Bayley surviving, and then Charlotte attacking Bayley after. So that appears to be the title direction there.
Right.
But as we discussed last week, very different in how they protected Braun Strowman versus Nia Jax, who were in similar positions. And Nia, it doesn't look like there was any thought to protecting her. I mean, she submitted.
No, I mean, like that's the biggest shocker for me out of all the elimination matches that she tapped out the way she did, because when she entered the match, she was so dominant against all 5 females from the SmackDown side. I thought, yes, this is the one that's going to propel her to the next level. But after the tap out, I felt like she was just another participant. There was nothing special about her. And I was looking for that specialness from her. And again, looking for a creative way to get her eliminated from the match, and it didn't happen.
Which, I mean, they had just done a count-out spot with Naomi. Like, you very much could have just swapped those eliminations.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, with this being the brand setups as they have them, this doesn't even build to anything for Nia tapping out to Becky Lynch. This is not something that you can move over to, saving like you mix up the rosters at some point, but that doesn't appear to be anything they're doing here.
Yeah.
So,
and I get the whole thing about trying to getting your heat back afterwards, but it just didn't fit with in the context anyways.
That said, I really did enjoy this show.
Yeah.
I thought, TakeOver and Survivor Series, I thought they were both very good shows. TakeOver I thought was really excellent. In particular, the 2 out of 3 falls match, and then the main event with Samoa Joe regaining the title. But thus far, the 2 nights at the Air Canada Centre. This is before night number 3.
Yeah.
I thought really good stuff, all in all.
Yeah, thumbs up on both nights. What I think a lot of fans should do is, separate their brain, like a left side and a right side, because it's natural to compare the NXT takeover to Survivor Series, but you have to separate the two because they're two separate brands with two separate presentations. What I like about the NXT thing, as I said before, it feels old school, but in an updated version. The main roster is going to be more entertainment-oriented, sports entertainment-oriented, and that's what you got. And sitting there live, I didn't feel like I was sitting there for an overly long period of time. I felt that the show flowed well. I didn't feel like there was too much dead time, and I enjoyed it. I have enjoyed both nights so far.
Now, the big chant of the weekend was Ty Dillinger's 10, a way to try and throw the referees off. Now, Jimmy, I look at this could turn into the next what, and I feel for these referees that these fans are just trying to mess with. So I want your perspective on the 10 chants.
But here's the thing. It's not just messing with the referees. They're actually messing with the entire match itself, because the whole idea of somebody being outside and the referee applying the 10 count to somebody outside, the talent on the outside has to be able to hear the referee's count to get, whether they want to get in at 8.5, 9, whatever. If they can't hear the referee and all they hear is 10, they don't know when to get back in the ring. They can't hear anything.
And the ref has to call it as though their count is being heard. I mean, if these chants truly take off, which based on this weekend, it sounds like this could be a what that they have on their hands. There's totally going to be screw-ups along the way. I mean, this is it really, to me, is like this chant that's like the fans are trying to have fun with it, but it's like I would hate to be the referee, and you bring up a great point, too, about the talent that are further away from the ref that probably can't hear them.
Yeah, because, they could yell all they want, but anybody who's ever been in an arena in that atmosphere with that sound, all that sound funneling down to ringside, they may not be able to hear the referee, and he could be at like 9, and they still think they've got time to get back in the ring and could end up getting an undesired finish, and somebody's going to get heat for it, so... let's put it on the people in the crowd. Well, let's put the heat on them.
That's going to wrap up our discussion on the Survivor Series. It was a very busy weekend here in Toronto, and we will be back in a few weeks because we've got 1 month left on the calendar, and thus Raw and SmackDown have shows. We'll be back in 2 weeks. TLC is in Dallas, and then they close out the year with Roadblock, the end of the line, that the slogan is for that one. The end of the line.
I'd like to know which line they're ending, but...
I don't know. Maybe that's a dig against Pittsburgh, which is where the city is where the event is taking place.
Is it the end of the line for Pittsburgh? Oh my goodness! Anybody who's been there may think so. Sorry.
I'll stay away from that one. But that is going to be the next time you hear from us. You can follow him at Jimmy Korderas, especially if you're from Pittsburgh, and you can follow me at I am John Pollock.
Message me, not him.